Hey everybody, this is GGB. We're going to be in College Basketball of the Day Sunday edition. First off, I'd like to wish everyone a happy Super Bowl Sunday, my favorite day of the entire year. It's when it culminates 32 different teams trying their hardest to win a ring. Finally, the two best teams are going at it for a chance to win a Super Bowl. A lot of teams haven't done that before. And so this is a huge opportunity for both the Eagles and the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes can start his legacy as possibly one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. But if he loses this one and Joe Burrow or Josh Allen wins it next year, they have the same amount of rings as Patty Mahomes. So it's a big game for Patty. It's also a pretty big game for Jalen Hurts. A huge game for him as well. But this isn't about the Super Bowl. This is about College Basketball Today Sunday edition. Fortunately, I wasn't able to record yesterday because it was Saturday and I had to go to a fencing competition. Did well, by the way. Let's freaking go, dude. But we had a lot of upsets yesterday. It's Sunday, as we always do. So let's start in the Big East. The Big East, we had two substantial upsets that are worth mentioning. One of them was a shocker. St. John's beat Providence at home to move to 15-11 overall, 5-10 in Big East play, and knocked Providence down to 10-4 in Big East play. Creighton got a big win over UConn, moving to 11-3 in Big East play. So big win for Creighton there. Why is this important? Marquette also won yesterday, but that one wasn't an upset. So Marquette moves to 12-3 and has half a game in first place. Xavier and Creighton are tied for second place, half a game back for first. And it was a big loss from Providence because it went from putting them at 11-3 and only half a game at first place in the Big East. Now they're a full game and a half back on Marquette. So big loss there suffered by the Friars. Lost by the UConn Huskies wasn't the worst in the world. They played a close game against a good Creighton team. But again, this is a team that's trying to fight to get a higher seed, and that was not a helpful loss. They lost. Luckily for them, Seton Hall also lost yesterday, putting them both at 8-7 and a tie for fifth. If Seton Hall had won yesterday, would have claimed sole possession of that fifth place. But luckily for UConn, Seton Hall also lost to Villanova. Fortunately for Butler, St. John wins, so St. John's and Butler are now tied. And unfortunately for both of them, Villanova also won to move to 6-8 in conference. St. John's and Butler both sit at 5-10. About a game and a half back on Villanova. Still catch-upable, but unfortunately for both those teams, Nova lost yesterday. Nova won yesterday. Moving to the Big Ten, we had one upset there, and it's Illinois beat Rutgers. Why is this important? Illinois is now 8-5 and is tied for third place. And regardless of what happens today, they're not going to be tied anymore. Northwestern is playing today, and we're going to be going over that game in a little bit. But Illinois is at 8-5 and tied with Northwestern for third place in the Big Ten. Big win, because now they're only a half game back on Indiana for second place. And that half game is a game against Minnesota, which was postponed earlier in the year. So that's very doable if you're a Fighting Illini fan to get second place in the Big Ten. Huge games upcoming for Illinois. Big loss by Rutgers moves them to 8-6 in conference and falls them into a tie for fifth with Maryland, Michigan, and depending on what happens today, Iowa and Michigan State could both move into this tie as well. So, big loss by Rutgers. They go from sitting happily at second place all by yourself to now being in a tie for fifth with a lot of other basketball teams. So, we'll see what happens in the Big Ten moving forward. Big loss by Rutgers. Big W for Illinois. Big win by Indiana to eke out Michigan this week, too. Big 12. We had two significant upsets. Okie State upset Iowa State on the road. Okie State moves to 7-5 in conference and suddenly the hottest team in the Big 12, winning 5 straight. They now sit in a tie for fourth place, guys, in the Big 12 with K-State and Iowa State, a team that looked dead in the water to start the year. At 1-4 in conference play, has turned their entire season around and is now at 7-5 in conference play and has a decent shot of not only, this is the team that I do not want to face. I do not want to face the Pokes right now if I'm any basketball team. They're playing insanely well. K-State suffers another crucial loss on the road. They went to Texas Tech, and Texas Tech beat them. Big win by Texas Tech, because a loss by Oklahoma to Kansas and a win by Texas Tech means that Texas Tech is now tied for 9th place instead of being in the sole position of last. Showing how tiebreakers work, it looks like Texas Tech has that tiebreaker over the Sooners. So it's going to be interesting moving forward. I don't think Texas Tech could ever possibly catch West Virginia. That seems unlikely. But keeping sole position of that 9th place is important moving forward if you're Texas Tech. In the SEC, we saw one significant upset that I feel like we have to mention. Mizzou hits a buzzer beater to beat Tennessee in the second of the week for Tennessee. They go from 8, they were at 7-1 at one point in conference play. They are now 8-4. They've gone 1-3 over their last 4 games, with losses to Mizzou, Florida, and Vanderbilt, only looking like one of those is an NCAA tourney team. To be fair, in that gap, they also beat Auburn. But Auburn is on a streak of losing 3 in a row now, too. Why is this a big loss for Tennessee? Tennessee they go from possibly being 9-3, 1 game back for second place, and now they're 8-4. They're 2 games back, and Texas A&M has a solid lead and a solid distance between second place and third place, which is great if you're an A&M Aggie fan. Mizzou gets a huge win, because not only does the win get you a huge quad 1 win, great win by Mizzou on the road, it moves you to 7-5, which might not sound the greatest in the world, but 7-5 is tied for 4th place in the SEC, only 1 game back on Tennessee for a chance at 3rd. So Mizzou enters, a loss would have put them at 6-6 and into the tie with Arkansas, Vandy, and Florida. Now they're in the tie with Auburn and Kentucky. To be fair, Auburn and Kentucky are not playing their greatest basketball right now. Mizzou's hitting their greatest basketball. So Mizzou is a threat to watch out for in the SEC, in my opinion. It's going to be interesting moving forward. But big win by Mizzou to put them in this position. A win obviously puts them in a tie for 4th place. A loss would have been a tie for 6th place with Arkansas, Vandy, and Florida. Big win by Mizzou to eke that out. Finally, in the Pac-12, we had a significant upset yesterday. Arizona traveled to Stanford, and Stanford got a huge win at home. Not to really put them in tourney competition or whatever. And Arizona continues their just so very confusing trend. They have so many. Arizona is easily the most confusing team in all of college basketball. They have so many great wins. They have so many quality wins. They went on the road and beat Indiana. They beat Tennessee. They've beaten San Diego State. They've beaten UCLA. They have some very high quality wins. But then you look at their losses, and it doesn't look like any of them are going to make the tourney. I mean, Utah's the only team that really has a shot. They've lost to Utah. They've lost to Washington State. They've lost to Oregon, and now they added a Stanford loss to the mix, and it's just so very confusing. All those are not great basketball teams. Utah's the only one that I would consider even a threat to make the postseason. It's going to be interesting moving forward for Arizona, but it was a big loss for Arizona. Huge win by UCLA. UCLA beat Oregon on the road, which isn't an easy W, but UCLA moves to 12-2 in conference. Arizona's at 11-4, which is about 2 games back. Is weird because Arizona's played 15 games. UCLA's only played 14. But assuming they're about a game and a half back, which was a huge loss from Arizona. Arizona was only a half game back before, and they could have caught up at the end of the year when they played them. But now Arizona does not control their own destiny. They could lose the Pac-12, and much of this, they could fall to a possibly 3 or 4 seed if they keep playing like this. Huge win by Stanford moves them to 5-9, ahead of Washington, who suffered a loss last night. Now they're only half a game back for a tie with Colorado and Washington State for 7th place in the Pac-12. And this was a Stanford team that's starting to play their best basketball, and it sucks if you're a Stanford fan, because you watch that Arizona State game slip away from you. You could easily be 6-8 right now, and in 6th place all by yourself in the Pac-12. You could be ahead of Colorado, be ahead of Washington State. But unfortunately, you let a very winnable game in the Arizona State game slip out of your fingers. So it's disappointing if you're a Stanford fan. But on the bright side, you're playing your best basketball right now, and you just beat a very good Arizona team. Good news for Stanford. Also, an upset I feel like worth mentioning, not top 25 upset, but Oregon State, a 3-11 basketball team, just beat USC, a 9-4 Pac-12 basketball team, at home. Not a big win for Oregon State. Huge loss for USC. That's going to be like a quad 4 loss by the end of the year. Just an awful loss if you're a USC basketball fan, because you were looking like a possible playoff team for a while now, and you've taken 2 back-to-back rough losses. One to Oregon State. The last one, they lost to Oregon badly. It's looking rough. If you're a USC fan, your chances of making the postseason are not the greatest in the world right now. Now I got to talk about the one basketball game we have at the top 25 today, which is it's a miracle that I'm even in this position. Like, I was sitting on Friday with 0 points, right? And it was looking like 1 point would be a miracle. I'm like, I don't see this ever happening. Butler's not going to beat Xavier. Little did I know, Butler was going to clutch that out. They tried so hard to blow it, but Butler clutches out a victory, puts me at 1.5 points. A victory by Creighton yesterday, which I went very safe there. I could have gone crazier, but I did the math, and I know I needed an upset to hit yesterday. It was the only way. My upset needed to hit yesterday, and I picked a very safe one in Creighton beating UConn, which ended up working out, which is to me at 2.5 points. I needed the biggest upset of the day. Today, I needed to pick the biggest upset of the day. Fortunately for me, there's only one top 25 basketball team playing today. So if Northwestern beats Purdue, I will hit the 4 points after having 0 for the first 4 days, which would just be an insane comeback. Northwestern at 2 o'clock. Number 1 Purdue, which is 23-2, travels to Northwestern, who's 17-7. Purdue favored by 4.5 points on the Big Ten Network. Why is this important? In Big Ten conference play. Not that all that important for Purdue. Again, they're playing really for just the standings in the overall tourney. They're not really, they've won the Big Ten, basically. They are like 4 games up on the closest team. It's going to be Purdue. However, Northwestern sits at 8-5 in conference play at 17-7. A lot of people have this as a bubble team. Northwestern's a bubble team. They're 8-5. With a win, not only do you get a huge win for your conference, your NCAA tourney hopes, you move to 9-5 in conference, and that's a tie for second place with Indiana. A loss, on the other hand, puts you at 8-6. Why is that important? It puts you into a tie for 4th. And you're like, that's not that bad. You're in a tie for 3rd right now. Tie for 4th is bad because you're in a tie for 4th with Maryland, Rutgers, Michigan, and possibly Iowa and Michigan State, depending on the outcomes of the day. I would bet at the very least Iowa. Michigan State's a very likely possibility, but I think Ohio State can beat them. Iowa is going to beat Minnesota today. So huge win for Northwestern. Could move into a tie for 2nd. A loss would send them into the 8-6. Who's rooting for them? No one. No one is rooting for Northwestern outside of Northwestern fans. Everyone knows that they can't reach Purdue. Basically, if you're an Indiana fan, if you're an Illinois fan, if you're a Maryland fan, Rutgers, Michigan, Iowa, Michigan State, they all know that their shot of getting higher is not Purdue losing, it's Purdue winning. So if Purdue beats Northwestern, great position for all of these basketball teams. All of them are big Boilermaker fans. Really, no one's a Northwestern fan today, outside of me and Northwestern fans. Northwestern, if they pull off the upset, would move to 9-5. They would get me that 1.5 points. So, hey everybody, this is GGP saying adios amigos, and oh dear God, please win Wildcats.